Hey guys, welcome in for a first of its kind video, especially for me as I attempt to get in front of a camera here and to peel back the curtain on my design workflow, on my process. I'm here to break down various designs that I've worked on, things that you have asked me about. I'm not good at responding to my DMs, but I do read a lot of them, and a lot of them started to come in after I posted this swap of McCarthy. And so I figured this is a perfect opportunity for me to start doing breakdowns and process videos. And so that's what I'm going to do with this today. I want to give you guys a behind the scenes look and really show you what goes into these types of pieces. And so I want to dive right into it. I won't be doing a lot of designing or really any designing today in this video, but I'm really gonna show you and break down all of the layers, all of the pieces that went into making this swap of things. So here we have the flattened comp. I always finish my pieces off with a camera raw filter, and so that's what we'll end this on. I'm gonna break down all of the layers and then we'll build them all back up and then finish it off with that camera raw filter so you can really get the process from start to finish. So let's just go into the smart object there that I used with all of our working layers here. Smart objects are fantastic if you don't like being destructive in your workflow, which is something that as you get more into designing and client work and things like that, you'll find out that being as least destructive as possible is the best way to go. And so here we have all of the main layers. And so we'll start with JJ's helmet, these shoulder stripes, and his pant stripes. And so basically just cut out the helmet from an image. I'll show you the original image. It's from Janae Johnson. She's a Minneapolis-based photographer, contracts with the Vikings. Incredible person, incredible artist. She, a couple of seasons ago, went up into the rafters of US Bank Stadium and captured some of these amazing overhead shots of the Vikings during their first winter whiteout matchup. And so I thought that this angle of TJ Hawkinson was going to work just fine. So I cut that out, changed the angle of it a little bit, scaled it down a bit, did a little adjusting, things like that. And that's what you'll find. I'm sure if you're an experienced designer that does this a lot, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You kind of just do what you have to do with these things to make it fit. It's kind of like the Bob Ross method. It's your world. You know, you do things on your terms in the way that you think works for you. And there are no mistakes, just happy accidents. And so we have a lot of happy accidents here, which is why I wear adult diapers. Jokes, sort of. The helmet. We have the helmet there. Hiding the helmet, putting it back on. You can see there kind of how that worked. And then we have the shoulder stripes here. Hide both of those. That photo came from this picture of Alexander Madison. Just took the shoulder stripes there and then flipped it for each side and warped it around to make that work. And so then we've also got the pant stripe, and I'll show you the original photo for that, which was this also Alexander Madison. Again, shout out Alex. Great dude. Congrats on the new contract in Las Vegas. It's going to be great. Okay, so there's the original image for that. And basically I cut it out and I transformed it, warped it, changed that perspective on it to really help attempt to, make that make sense down there on JJ's legs. Since this is an overhead angle, it is a little tricky sometimes when adjusting that perspective, but I feel like we made it work for the most part. Now the color change on this was the easiest part of the swap by far. I use an adjustment layer from time to time called selective color, and basically we just told the blue information to go purple. And that's kind of how that goes. It's nice because if you just tell the blues like we have in here, I'm not sure if you can see that behind my head. I'll bring it up a little bit. You can tell the blues, you can tell that blue information to just kind of go purple. Just change that up a little bit, and so it doesn't affect any of the other colors in the comp, so you don't have to do any masking or anything, which can get tricky. But for this, it just made sense to go that route because there aren't any other blues around. So essentially it was just, it was an easy way to change the colors without having to go through the masking process, things like that, which is why this swap didn't really take me a lot of time. So let's hide that. Let's go back to blue. And then we are getting into our generative fill. And so I use so much generative fill in my workflow anymore. It's made especially with jersey swaps, because what we used to have to do is do content aware fill or clone stamping. And I mean, that's still something that people use and is something that is still very useful. But generative fill has made the process so easy, so streamlined. And so shout out to Adobe for implementing that artificial intelligence into our workflows for us, because it's made life very easy. Next down here we have the armband, the armbands, or the wristband, I suppose, and the sleeves. So we darkened them and also desaturated them to make them black, since that makes more sense rather than just having everything, purple. I just figured let's differentiate things a bit. Let's desaturate it, make it black to kind of, really brand it Vikings, since that's what a lot of players do with that. So let's get rid of that. And then we've got shadows on the numbers here on the back, the numbers in that nameplate, and all of these numbers and the nameplate were typed out individually using a font. I think it's called NFL Minnesota Vikings is the font. And so instead of going through and finding a jersey angle that matched this, I just figured let's do it this way. And I think we got a pretty clean result from it. And so in the letters and numbers here, let's get rid of the Nike swooshes. And we also painted that strap white to, amp up that realism, to really make it an authentic swap, to the best of our ability, of course. So then we have the right and the left shoulder numbers, and you'll see here it says NFL Minnesota Vikings. That is the font. I downloaded it online for free, and you can do the same thing. Okay, so let's get rid of those. We have the back number there that we got rid of. Just change the perspective of it, obviously, to match the angle. And then we've got McCarthy as well, that nameplate. Same font, NFL Minnesota Vikings, and then from there we just, adjusted the perspective and everything on that. And then we added an NFL logo to the towel to increase that realism a bit. So if we zoom out, we basically just have a blank Michigan Wolverines jersey. And that's where the generative fill comes in. We'll fill that back out, and so you can see what the image looked like before any editing took place. And so the first is the back plate and that number 9 for Michigan. Then we had the jersey sleeves with the 9 on them. We had the college football national championship logo that we generated out of there. There was a Michigan logo on the towel, and then JJ. And since Michigan is a Jordan school, got that Jumpman logo generated out of that. And so that's basically what the photo looks like prior to any editing, any swapping happening, that kind of stuff. But there were also a couple of pieces. So we've got these field stripes that were not in the original photo, but since this photo was taken at the national championship in Houston at NRG Stadium, you can still see that the NFL lines for the Texans are still very faint, very, they're sort of there. So we decided, let's paint those back in. Let's increase the realism of this a bit more. And so we can hide those again, just letting you know that those were not there. And then we've got our NFL football. You can see the original one, not exactly the same angle, things like that, but finding a good image of a NFL football can be, taxing sometimes. And so I figured let's just go with what we can find and make the most of it. And so I added some highlights to that left edge there to help with the realism, and then did some selective color on that, while also, of course, doing some camera raw filter and adding a motion blur. So, we can zoom back into this, kind of show you motion blur, camera raw filter, darkens it up a little bit, selective color, and some highlights. So the big thing about designing is that the more attention you pay to details like that, the more it's going to enhance your comp. And so just finding different nuances and stuff like that you can add in that are really going to make your pieces stand out. And so that's something that you'll notice that I do a lot of the time. Even if it's something so small, it can really just enhance that realism and really bring out your comp. And so here we have what it looked like prior to any editing happening. Obviously we use generative fill here to extend the background and stuff like that, so we can go back, and that's what it kind of looks like prior to any swapping, I suppose. So let's go back in. We're halfway there. We broke it down, and so now we'll go in. Not going to do any designing, but we're just going to bring back those layers and really make this a Viking swap. So let's start with the ball. Again, zoom in on that. Bring in the NFL ball. Again, you can hide the smart filters, motion blur, camera raw filter. Do some selective coloring, and then an adjustment layer using curves, bring that down, and then paint in those highlights on the side there to amp up that realism a bit. We'll bring back in those field stripes. It was just a textured brush. As we get more into that, I'll show you the brush settings, and if we do something similar to this in the future, you'll be able to see exactly what I do. But for these purposes, it was a textured brush, and I used some blend if to really blend it into the turf there. And so next step we have is to generate all of these uniform elements away to give us a blank canvas to work with. So we're going to generate the Jumpman logo, the Michigan logo, the College Football National Championship logo, and then the numbers and the back plate. See ya. Thanks for stopping by. And then we're going to now add in our Vikings branded things. So we've got the McCarthy nameplate that we've added in right there, the NFL logo on the towel, the back number 9, the left and right shoulder 9s, the white strap, and the Nike logos to go on that uniform. And so then we have our shadows. That was a very smooth brush that we used to paint in some of those shadows and to increase that realism there. And so then, of course, last bit on this part of the uniform is to bring down the curves, since we are making the sleeves and the wristband black. And then our finishing piece is to change that color to purple, and then add in those shoulder stripes, add those back in, as well as our helmet. And so those are the bones. Very simple. I got a comment on this when I posted it saying how simple it was. I just started laughing because I'm like, they're absolutely right. This is a very, very simple swap, especially in comparison to some of the other swaps out there. They can get very difficult and complicated, and they can take quite a bit of time. But those are basically the bones. We can exit out of this and go back to our main comp here. And just to add a couple of design elements, I added the draft logo, the Michigan and Vikings logo lockup, as well as JJ's signature there. And before I go into Camera Raw, Photoshop's been having some issues with Camera Raw, so I'm going to make sure we save this. Always save, Command S, Control S, always save. Let's go into these Camera Raw settings, just so you can kind of see how I changed this and how I edited this or finished it off, I suppose. So we'll go into this. First off, I distorted it a little bit to zoom it out a little bit, increase that perspective. Always doing stuff with the lighting, decreasing those highlights, decreasing the shadows, bringing up the whites a little bit, things like that. This is all personal preference once you get to this point. You know, really in any juncture of the design, it's all personal preference. If you like it and if it works for you, then do it. And so Camera Raw is all personal preference for me. I always enhance the clarity. I'll add a vignette, add some grain in there because I really like textures and things like that. Color Mixer is one of the things that I really started to use over the past 6 to 8 months. It works a lot like selective color, that adjustment layer, but gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of, changing the hues of things. And so you can really, play with the purples and stuff like that. But then you can also play with the saturation, things like that. It's all very useful, very good tools to use. Did a little bit of detailing because, as you can see, I don't want to zoom in too much because it's gonna make it look worse, but the original photo wasn't the highest resolution in the world, but it was high enough to make for a pretty decent swap. When swapping, I always say, try to use the highest resolution images that you can find. Even if the pose isn't totally ideal, I would much rather have a high-res photo to swap with than a low-res one. And so we increase the sharpening a little bit. Sometimes we'll do some noise reduction, but I felt like it was already looking a little like smooth, except for some areas, where that pixelation is happening just due to the fact that it's a fairly low-res image. But yeah, that is essentially it. That is how we put this together. Oh, obviously we got to finish it off with a watermark, even though people love to crop those out. But that's our finished comp. Let me know in the comments or DM me if you have any additional questions into how this kind of worked. I'm always open. I read my DMs. I read a lot of them, but I'm not very good at responding to them, which is something that I really want to get better at. But if you have any other questions about this, just please feel free to reach out. I want to be a resource to you guys more than anything. Design can be tough, and these programs do have a little bit of a steep learning curve at times, and so I want to make myself available for you guys and help in any way that I can. But yeah, that's kind of how it came together. So thanks for sticking around. Thanks for watching. We're going to do this more often. I just need to get more comfortable in front of the camera. And so, yeah, that's the JJ McCarthy swap. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.